We're leaning on you. How's our sound?
Yeah, we've been having some concerning sound issues. So, anyways.
Let us know if it's not loud enough.
Yes, please do. Please do. But anyways, hello, everyone.
Welcome to the show. You're listening to The Wow Pod. I'm Betsy.
And I'm Jared.
And tonight is another true crime.
Yeah.
This one's right up our alley, though.
The listeners have spoken, and
you guys love true crime. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yes.
I love true crime.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a morbid fascination.
Most of the podcasts I listen to tend to be kind of true crime centric.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Yeah. So tonight,
what's up, Jackson?
We're going to talk about Issei Sagawa.
Yes. Try spelling that on your own. And I will let you know, I have heard of this in the past, but I know nothing about this story, which is the way I like it. We should just call this
surprise.
Jared gets to hear the show along with everyone else.
That's right. That's right. So myself, like many others, have this fascination, this kind of morbid curiosity, so to speak, about the inner workings of the mind of a serial killer or killers. I find myself watching lots of documentaries and these psychological reviews about people who kill. I think it's because it's so different than the way I view the world around me.
And also you're, let's just be honest. You're a lady and ladies love this stuff. That is one thing, that'd be a psychological show as to why true crime has, unfettered love.
Okay. So I have a working theory. I watch shows and then I feel better about my life. So I watch true crime and I'm like, I ain't got it that bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Look at me. Got all my limbs. Nobody tried to eat me today.
No one climbed through the window.
I mean, it's not that bad. I watch Hoarders and I'm like, look at my house. I'm killing it. So that's my working theory. There's probably more to it, but
there might be, and it might just be the excitement factor.
Yeah, the suspense. I find myself reading a lot of suspenseful novels as well. Like
a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It adds a safe but scary excitement, and watching scary, home invasion movies and all that offers that excitement, but it's safe. Yeah.
Perhaps. So, in the case of Issei Sagawa, like many other killers, serial killers, demented individuals, there's this entire range of circumstances that contribute to both the disposition and the consequences of that disposition. And we're going to first talk about some of those with Issei.
Okay.
So who is he? He's somewhat of a notorious serial killer these days. And serial killers loosely used. But we know of one person he's killed. He's got this claim to fame. There were others. I don't know. You tell me as you listen to the story if you think he's capable. So he comes from this relatively humble beginning. Born April 26, 1947, in the city of Hyogo Prefecture, Japan. So it's claimed that he was born premature and that he was so small, so tiny that he could fit into the palm of his father's hand. And as we know, these premature births can bring a whole host of physical abnormalities and developmental difficulties. it's reported that one of those developmental disabilities is this enteritis. It affects your small intestine and the way that you process food. And he had to have this treated with this really long series of injections. The other one is his small stature. So he was 4'11", 90-something pounds. Little guy. Really, really little guy. And they attribute that both to his heritage. His parents weren't very tall. Mm-hmm. As well as his premature birth. Mm-hmm. So in his formative years, he's said to have been something of a bookworm. It's also said that he suffered quite a bit of bullying because of his size and his stature, so he kind of withdrew into his books. He followed this passion well into his 20s and studied and obtained a master's degree in literature. So
he was excellent to be a librarian.
He'd have been the perfect librarian.
How? So he could have managed all the cooking books.
Gross. So, giving a little bit away as we travel through this, but in his late 20s, he also sought to further his education, and he obtained his doctorate in literature in Paris. So he was in Japan, got his master's, and then he got his doctorate by attending a school in Paris called Sorbonne. Mm-hmm. So he says that it wasn't until his 20s that he began to act on his cannibalistic urges. Although he also goes on to say that the very first time he had an impulse to consume human flesh was when he was 7 years old.
So it kicked off young for him.
7. And here's what he goes on to say, because he writes prolifically. He's got tons of novels.
Really?
Yeah. But he says that he saw a male thigh, like short running shorts, I don't know. And that this was the first time that he thought, I need to consume that. So like something in his brain. Mm. Now, it is also said in some of his writings that he did things with the family pet when he was really young.
Did things. I don't like the way you say that.
And this is in his own writing. Yes.
What does that mean?
You know what that means. But the very first time he had the impulse to consume human flesh was when he was 7 years old. He stated that while he was getting his doctorate in Paris, he would often hire sex workers, and then he would attempt to shoot them and then consume their flesh. His idea was that he would hire them, get them home. He had the weapon, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it.
Is it okay if I'm still a little strung up on
the dog thing?
The did things to the family pet. So he was checking off all the taboos.
He kind of was.
So at 7 years old, he starts thinking to himself, looking around the world like as a little kid, like that's a little kid. And he's thinking
so young.
And he's thinking to himself, I wonder how that person would taste.
He wanted them to become a part of him. We hear this with Dahmer and many other cannibals, that they feel like by consuming them that they will become a part of them.
Like they'll gain their strength or something?
I don't know. So, according to Sagawa, He hires these sex workers. He makes all of these failed attempts to end their lives and consume their flesh. He gets this thought in his idea that it's because he has talked to them and communicated with them that's the reason he can't go through with it. So
he's, again, obviously the family pet he wasn't trying to become a part of.
No, he wasn't trying to eat the family pet.
Maybe the beast with two backs.
Yes. Yes. And he put this in his own novel. This is not something that was interjected by anyone else. So based on this theory that because he's talked to them, they've seen his face, there's this connection, he feels like this is what's holding him back. So he starts kind of lurking around the streets of Paris while he's obtaining his doctorate in literature. And he sees this German woman walking, and he follows her home. He says it's just this curiosity. He just wants to see what she does when she's home. And he watches through her window. She's in various states of undress. And he says he gets this urge that he wants to bite her butt. And the urge is so consuming that he sits in the street, in the dark, in the cold, until this woman goes to bed and falls to sleep. And then, being of such small stature, he just wriggles up, climbs through the window, enters her bedroom. Ladies, I'm going to take this moment to remind you, if you're on a ground floor, lock your bedroom window. You just never know, like, if your butt looks delicious or not.
So this will be a lot of sleeping person bum touchers that we've come across.
It's a whole thing. There's a whole segment.
Do they have a support group? Like, do they hand out coins?
I don't, like 1 year of sobriety. I don't know. So he crawls into this window, but he hadn't really thought beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
First of all, he doesn't have a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So she's asleep, and he starts looking around her room, trying not to make a ton of noise, and finds this blue umbrella. And he says he's thinking this through in his head. Like, if he just leans over and takes a bite, she's going to wake up.
Okay. As you would think. Go on.
So he's going to use this umbrella to
tickle her nose and bite.
To bludgeon her and knock her out.
With an umbrella?
And he's 4'11". So, I mean, perhaps an umbrella is a good weapon in the hands of a giant. I don't know.
But umbrellas have all that fabric on the outside.
And flex, and they've got the little wires inside.
Soft.
Yeah.
That would soften. Okay, go on.
So he attempts to knock her out with this umbrella, to which she wakes up and she clobbers him.
She wakes up, average-sized woman, towers over him.
Yes. So she clobbers him. He gets arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And he's charged with attempted rape.
Yeah.
Now, he doesn't at this time come completely forthright and say, well, I wasn't trying to rape her. I just wanted to bite her butt.
Look.
He keeps that. Mum's the word.
Hold on.
Zip it, lock it.
As awful as the rape is, which is awful, would saying I'm a cannibal, would that be a little worse, maybe?
I don't. Mm-hmm. The scales. I don't know.
Like if you went before a judge and said, I wanted to eat that person,
Listen, I wasn't going to sexually assault her. I just wanted to taste her.
I just wanted to eat.
I just wanted a little nibble.
I was just going to chew on the left cheek.
So, keep that left cheek thought in your mind.
Oh, here we go. This is going to get good.
So, he gets arrested.
Uh-huh.
He gets thrown in jail.
Uh-huh.
While he's awaiting trial,
Uh-huh.
his father, who at the time was the president of the largest water treatment plant in Japan,
Uh-huh.
his grandfather was the established editor for one of the four largest newspapers in Japan. His family's wealth is beyond compare.
Mm-hmm.
They reach out to the woman and they pay her an undisclosed amount of money to drop the charges.
Betsy, some guy breaks in to bite your bum.
Ooh. What
What's
does
your
that
price?
cost? What does that cost? What does that cost?
What's your price?
Okay.
If you're a bum biter, turn off now. You don't need to hear this.
That's a hard one because I have often said everyone's got a price, and I would do some sketchy shit for $1 million.
Easy. Cannibal is getting away with attempted cannibalism for $1 million. Easy.
So we're talking an extremely heinous act, but an extremely wealthy family who wants to save this dishonor. I would imagine that the figure was high.
See, for me, this is for me. Like if
$100. Cold bill. Left cheek.
in nickels. Seriously, like an annual, a year's wage, and I would probably be able to turn a blind eye to anything.
That's the thing I'm saying. So I know that this comes up a lot in conversation. Like, I can't believe they were bought. Think about it just for a moment.
Yeah. How are you not bought?
So, parents, grandparents come together. They save this immeasurable dishonor from being brought upon the family name. And they pay her off. She drops the charges.
Now, this was a German lady that was living in France.
In Paris. Yep.
Okay.
So she drops the charges and he's cut loose.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes on to say that did not dissuade him.
You'd have thought his folks would have at least said, okay, you're coming back to Japan with us. Or did he not tell his folks? He might have lied to his folks and said...
I think with that kind of wealth and power, they were able to see exactly what he was charged with. And they had to speak directly with this woman.
What he was charged with was...
totally different than what he was doing.
Yeah. Like, let's say your beloved son. You love him dearly. But he wants to eat a person. What are you doing? You know the movies where you shackle a kid under the stairs to the wall and you go down there and throw a plate of food at him every once in a while? That might be where I would go with it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean...
You would feel somewhat responsible for his behavior, no matter what his upbringing was.
Yeah.
Like, if you're hosting parties where you're eating people, fine. But if you're not, you would still feel responsible.
What was that cannibal
Marina
club?
Abramovic.
What was that cannibal club in L.A.?
Yeah, the cannibal
where they
club.
had the placenta
lasagna. Disgusting. You can will your body to them.
Hey, I'm still for sale, guys.
This is what I'm saying.
But that's upon my death. Upon my death, $1 million. And I would, honestly, I've already told the boy, do whatever's cheapest.
Yeah.
I'm already gone.
Yeah.
You know? Unless the option is to shoot me into outer space. Then do that. Unless it's out of reach.
You become the next panspermia.
Seriously.
Your parts and pieces come together on another planet.
And if they've got a trebuchet option, that's the way I want to go.
That sound, whoosh.
Imagine that. Oh, okay. Okay, go on. So he gets away with...
He gets away with it.
Attempted butt chewing.
This is what I'm saying. At this point, he didn't want to kill this lady. He wanted to bludgeon her and bite her butt.
He wanted a nibble.
He goes on about his life. He goes on about his life.
Uh-huh.
And he apparently continues to make all of these like failed attempts at killing sex workers. Now, this is in his words. Maybe he killed lots. I don't know, though, because...
So, failed attempts. Now, it sounds to me more like he had chicken out attempts.
Chicken out attempts. Yes, it's not like he
failed attempt is like he shoots at him and then he's got to do drywall work the next day.
No, like he chickens out.
So he gets close enough, but for whatever reason, he opts not to.
Correct.
This literary doctor.
Seriously.
What was his degree again?
He had a doctorate in literature.
How does that work, people?
I don't know.
A doctorate in literature.
You just read a lot. You basically have one.
Yeah, but I mean, like...
If you just book hours.
This is a page.
So, due to this lack of consequences, he says that he continues to escalate in his attempts. And
in his chicken outs.
And at the age of...
Chickening out is good in this case, folks.
Yes. At the age of 32, he meets this lady named Renee. Renee Hartfeld is of German descent as well. He had this thing with...
He liked the Frauleins?
Yeah, I don't know. He had this thing with a particular stature, tall and, brawny and... I don't know. But
Betsy, it's simple math. He's after the kings, the monarchs.
God.
He doesn't want to go hungry.
So
that is bad to say, folks.
She's a fellow classmate of his.
Oh, she's another literary doctorate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he befriends her. So they meet at the school, have coffee a couple of times.
And I imagine with him being 4'11",
she really thought that they were just like friend zone, not like
well, not just that, but a foreigner, Asian.
Yes.
They're usually quite. How do I say it? They're quiet and subdued and thoughtful generally. Not that I mean to stereotype all Asians. Some of y'all might be buttholes, but the average ones I've met weren't. So
they're nice.
He probably came across very
meek,
non-threatening.
Yes. So she apparently comes back to his apartment on several occasions, and he said the first time she came over, he was just kind of feeling it out. The second time she came over,
have you ever dreamed about being nibbled on?
The second time she came over,
the circle of life.
He said he had this loaded .22, and he kept going back to the room and kind of making a decision whether
fondling
or not he could do it. Yeah.
Doing the old hi Sabrina to aiming it at that picture of Aunt Nessie on the other lady.
Freeze.
Yeah.
Put your hands up. I don't know. The third or fourth time she comes over to his house, they've kind of built this
he's like building up to it. Like I imagine every time he sets up a dinner date, a friend dinner date, he just
thinks
pacing.
about this.
Now's the time. This yelling at himself in the mirror. You're gonna do this. You do this, and it's not happening.
Yeah. So the third or fourth time she comes over, he gives her this poem that's written in German, and the pretense is that he would like her to translate.
I want to hear a German poem. I want to hear
It sounds angry.
particularly a very sultry love poem in German.
You need to get your AI to create you one and then run it through Google Speak. And have Google Speak read it to you.
Yeah. Because I imagine a German poem is either you're falling, you recognize, or you're thinking they're calling for some Lebensraum.
Yes. So conveniently, she agrees to, not conveniently for her, she agrees to translate this poem, and she does so, he says, with her back to him. So
like she takes a poem and she turns
Mm-hmm.
around to maybe study it for a second, maybe get a feel for the literary major, check the spelling real quick. I imagine as a literary major, you carry a red pen, marker, or pencil with you at all times.
In a pocket protector.
They break it out and they just start. They probably, once you get to that point, you probably can't read a book for the enjoyment of the book.
Yeah.
Like you've got to pick it apart.
It ruins it.
Double spaced again.
Yeah. So she turns around and he builds up enough courage and he shoots her with this .22 in the neck, claiming,
I bet it doesn't kill her.
Claiming that it killed her instantaneously.
A .22?
I'm just saying.
Where at now, if it pierced the jugular, it wouldn't be instantaneous, but it'd be
close.
It'd be
fast. 30, 60 seconds.
Yeah, minute, at the most.
But he wouldn't know.
If she doesn't cover it. I mean, if she covers it.
But he wouldn't know. See, this is where the story dives, because the second he shoots her, sees a little blood, passes out.
Right off
just whack. He says he just flat out passes out.
She might be like flailing around the house.
He wouldn't know.
He is the worst cannibal.
So it gets worse. Oh. So he says he comes to. This is all in his own writing. He says he comes to and he sees her corpse and he gathers himself and he realizes that this is his time. He can actually follow through. Now, he first starts...
It's got like carpet imprint still on his face and some drool running down his cheek.
He first starts with her right butt cheek because of the passing out. He thinks it'll have less blood than the left based on the heart location.
Okay.
So he dives on.
So he thinks the lividity will. Okay.
He dives on and starts to chew on her butt.
He just goes right for it. He doesn't get any utensils.
It gets worse.
We've learned this, that Milvis guy. I mean, he tried whittling through some stuff and he's like grinding his teeth back and forth and you can't do it.
So this is what he figures out about 10 or 15 minutes later, that he cannot chew a piece off.
His jaw's all sore like he threw a whole pack of Hubba Bubba in there.
So he gives up trying to chew it off, and he gets like a fruit paring knife. You can't make this up. And so he starts to use it, but he finds that it's hard. Like, it's really hard. So he leaves. And he goes to a super center, similar to a Walmart, but something different.
Yeah.
And he buys...
Ooh La La Mart.
Yeah.
It's in France.
And he buys this curved meat knife.
Mm-hmm.
Gets home, and that starts to work.
Yeah, paring knife is good.
So he starts sampling like the
raw meat?
Yeah, so he's eating it like sashimi. He's cutting pieces off. He's like experimenting.
One thing we forgot to throw out. The area he is from, like the particular town, is called Kobe.
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Yes. So he starts taking parts of her from all over.
Just sampling.
Cheek, tongue.
There's no meat on the cheek.
Her bicep, her breasts, her butt. And in his memoirs, he describes the meat from all of these places.
As you do.
So he takes several bags of these, freezes them in the freezer, and she's still in his apartment, just like still in his apartment.
Just gonna start. How long?
So he goes to bed. Now, he wakes up the next day and continues. He says he wakes up and he kind of smells to see if the meat is rotting, and he's just ecstatic that he has another day to experiment with this. And so he does for a second day, just kind of picking around and all of these things. Now, he goes to bed that night and wakes up the next day, and he said that there's this odor. So he takes this little hooked knife, and the guy's like 90 pounds. He realizes very quickly that he needs to find a way to move her. So he had taken these lessons on how to cut apart meat.
How to process.
Yes. So apparently not very well, because he tries to use this hooked meat knife to process. And he said he just worked and could not. He just couldn't get this meat processed. And he knows it's gone bad now. So it's all got to go out. So he leaves again. This time he gets a turkey carving knife. One of those.
The electric. From the 60s, so the handle is.
So he comes back and.
Like a big around as a tuna can. And
so he comes back.
Hooks into the wall.
And he says with a lot of work, he gets her into pieces. Then he gets this idea that he's going to put her in 2 big luggages. So he does. He fits her in Tetris and puzzle style.
Let's say she's average weight for the 6, let's just say 135 pounds. And he's picked off maybe 8 pounds with this paring knife in the freezer. So he's looking at each one
sicko.
Weighing 70 pounds.
Approximately 70 to 80 pounds is what each one of these weighed.
Ooh.
So he does. And then he calls for a cab. Now, he lugs these giant suitcases down to meet the cabbie. And the cabbie is on record when they interview him later as saying, I made a bad joke, and was like, what you got in here, dead person? The cabbie says that these bags were so heavy, and this little Japanese guy's just wrestling them down to the car.
Dragging them.
There's all of his weight wrestling him down to the car, that the cabbie gets out and helps him load them into the trunk. Issei has this brilliant idea. He's going to go to this park in Paris. Now, it's like 11:30 at night. However, it's Paris, and this is one of the most visited parks. It's got these big seating areas. It's got several lakes. It's got trails. And he takes these 2 suitcases to the park. Tons of people are there. Tons of people are there. So the cabbie helps him unload it. And he's like, God, what do you got in here? A dead body? And Issei says, no, it's full of books. I'm a literature major. So the cabbie just is like, oh, okay, whatever. Issei then walks about a quarter of a mile, just lumping these giant suitcases.
Dragging them both at the same time?
Dragging them both. Moving one, going back for the other one. Moving it, going back for the other one. He takes them down to this giant lake that's in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And he gets on all fours. Tons of people are watching him do this.
He's at like the park. People are out there doing the old floaty where the husband rows and the lady with the umbrella.
Seriously. And people report that he's on all fours, just pushing these into the lake.
Uh-huh.
And a guy walks over and is like, what are you doing? And Issei pushes the last one into the lake. And the guy's like, what is in that? And Issei just walks off, nonchalantly just walks off.
Just ignores him.
Yep.
I don't know whether...
The guy unzips it. Issei's
so the
10 yards away.
Drags it back out.
It's not even all the way. Issei can't even get him in the water all the way. They're just at the edge. Yes. The guy unzips it and he yells, murderer, murderer.
Uh-huh.
And so people start looking and they're just like, okay, he's about 4 foot nothing. He's probably 90 pounds, little Japanese guy.
From a distance, you'd probably think he was a child.
Yeah. So people are noticing him and he just keeps walking, walks all the way back to his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
The police show up. They do find that it, in fact, has 2 suitcases and it's a body between the 2 suitcases. So they start interviewing everybody at the park. And one person says, I think he got here by a cab. So they call the cab companies and they say, we want to know if any of your cab companies picked up a guy, small Japanese, with 2 heavy suitcases. And the cabbie's like, I did. I actually joked that there might be a dead body inside.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that didn't age well. So the cabbie's like, I'll take you right to where I picked him up at. So they find him the very next day. And he goes to jail for cannibalism, murder, all of these things. They stick it to him. And he's imprisoned while he awaits his trial.
Mm-hmm.
So this lasted about 2 years. Then his father is able to step in yet again, knowing, like, his dad's got to know all the things.
Wealthy people get away with stuff, though.
2 years is all he spent in jail. His father uses his wealth to have Issei released from prison and declared insane, transported back to Japan, and put in a mental institution.
There's a little bit of an argument there, though.
I would agree he is. However,
I still think that...
So he gets to Japan.
Uh-huh.
He's in an institution for 2 months.
Ooh, well, no, time served.
Uh-huh. The Japanese are begging the authorities in Paris to give them the information so they can try Issei in Japan. Nope.
Okay. Really?
We give you nothing.
Them little mustaches.
So,
why couldn't they have the Germans get the information because he killed a German girl?
Japan says, we ain't got nothing to hold him. And they released him.
Oh.
So Issei spent 2 years and approximately 2 months behind bars and in an institution before he was just cut loose. Then people want to get to know him. They are just fascinated by his story. And he doesn't even try to hide it. He uses his real name. He does a ton of interviews. He's kind of becomes like this playboy. What are you doing?
Well, when I look at the pictures of him on the internet, he likes to take creepy pictures. He likes to have creepy pictures out there of him.
Worse yet, Issei has a brother.
Uh-huh.
Issei's brother's interviews and commentary are like nothing I've ever heard before. Because he's basically saying, oh, you think he's bad? You should see what I think about. You should spend 10 minutes inside my brain. So is his
brother, do you think his brother's just trying to gain a market on it?
I don't know.
Or do you think his brother's a kooky pants too?
A creepy cannibal. I don't know. So he goes on to try and use his literary background and his proclivities to find employment. And he starts doing restaurant reviews.
Seriously.
And that's short-lived because he's just so well known. They call him the Kobe cannibal killer. And he's just so well known that he has this entourage of people following him. So he has a really hard time finding reputable work. So he starts writing novels and doing these like low budget documentaries. There was one documentary, they've pulled it. I can't find it, but I did read some of the transcript where in this documentary, it's an Australian documentary. In this documentary, he walks the interviewer through everything. Like they stage an apartment. He shows them where he cut. Like he shows them how he prepared it. Like disgusting.
So he does like a play-by-play for
Yep.
This Aussie guy.
Yeah. And he writes a bunch of novels, like in his own words. This is who I am. This is what I did. They're all in Japanese, of course. So if you do look for some of his novels, you can find them, but you have to use some translation. And from what I understand, it's a little choppy.
They haven't done any into English, though, huh?
No.
Now, I wonder how much he's embellishing and trying to make himself look better. Or do you think he's leaning into he might be embellishing the other way, too. Then again, he's right now. I saw blood passed out,
Yeah. Here's what I don't understand.
Dumbest doctor ever.
He comes from this family of great wealth, where if he just was like following that trajectory, he could follow right in the footsteps. I mean, his grandpa was an editor. He's got a doctorate in literature. He could have, had he not eaten a person, followed right in those footsteps and kind of kept that family lineage going, but he doesn't. And so he ends up destitute.
Really?
Score one for the home team. He writes all of these novels. He kind of has his day in the sunlight. And then he ends up destitute. These people...
Where did all his family money get
They
squelched?
cut him off.
Oh, they cut him off.
They got him
what
into
about the other psycho brother?
I don't know what happened to him. So, eventually, he gets really, really sick. He's diagnosed with a cerebral infarction. It's a disease that causes brain tissues to slowly die off.
Sounds like a little bit of them tannins coming back.
Sounds like some prions you've been gobbling up there, Issei. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and he's unable to live independently and dies of pneumonia. Get this. November 24th, 2022. Last year.
Quiet.
This Kobe cannibal died last year.
I feel terrible for the girl that got sucked in thinking she just found a friend who's, a doctor in literary
They're like, yeah.
Literature.
Yeah. They're like twin spirits and they love the same things. And he's clearly,
I mean, he's downloading or he's gathering poems in German.
Yeah.
She's probably thinks she's found like the best friend ever.
Yeah.
And all he wants to do
is eat her butt. That's the whole drive. Just bite that butt. So, I don't want it on my search history, but if someone wants to search out if there's a support group for Butt Biters Anonymous, let us know. Let us know. Katie says anyone can be bought for the right price. That is what I'm saying.
That's
and I
fact.
believe that's what's wrong with politics. I don't know if you go into politics with like these great intentions and you're going to save the world and make great laws and do all the right things. And then the lobbyists step in and they're like, $1 million. All you got to do is sign this.
Yeah.
Just sign it. $1 million.
Yeah.
And then that starts the snowball, the domino, where your morals are just out the window because $1 million changes a lot.
Well, the thing is if damage was done to me, like someone hurt me, gosh, the bad thing about that is, yeah, I would, pay me off. It's not like our justice system's going to make me whole. Pay me off, but then they end up out where they can do it to someone else.
That's the moral dilemma.
Like he did. Now imagine.
Even though I would argue that even if she probably thought this through, that attempted rape is not going to get him a long time anyway. And he's going to be out
especially
anyway.
back then.
So she may as well get something out of this so that she can move from the place where the guy tried to butt her butt.
And move on with life.
And move on with life.
Yeah.
And who knows? It could have been $5 or $10 million that they paid her.
Yeah, and back then
we're talking a billionaire family.
And this is in the 60s.
Yes.
So, I mean, that would have...
this is what I'm saying. Knowing what you know about how the system works, you would likely weigh, like, if I don't accept this money and I keep these charges, he may get a couple months in jail and then he's out anyway.
And I'm going to say this. If that guy had a semblance of competence in him, he would have gotten away.
100%.
If he'd had any competence.
Yeah.
Any at all, he'd have gotten away.
And I would also argue that his dad and grandpa knew what would happen if he got back to Japan. That they would at least, at a minimum, change the trajectory of the amount of time he spent in prison just based on that lag of information.
Well, another question is, do you think that they brought him back there thinking he would get away with it? Or do you think they brought him back there thinking that if they could get Japan to try him, one, it wouldn't be as horrible maybe, but they would still have some more control?
I don't know.
But, I've got to be honest. If it was my kid, I don't know. Of course, I don't have any money. If I can get him off for a roll of nickels, give me a couple weeks. But
yeah, I don't know.
That's tough. That is tough.
Yeah.
And we see it on the TV all the time. Wealthy kids are shit bricks.
Money talks.
You get 3 generations of wealth, and then, you see it on the news right now. You got Hunter Biden. He's a clown.
He's an upstanding citizen.
He's, and that's not even a political notion. He's just a clown.
Yeah.
And that's, he grew up probably, financially wanting for nothing.
Sure. Big money. That family's big money.
Yeah.
So that's tonight's show. Issei Sagawa. King says, first rule, don't kill if you're afraid of blood. Like, honestly.
Seriously, yeah.
Like, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a tragic story of,
it is.
of someone getting away with something
I feel bad for Renee.
Completely heinous. And it makes me want to explore
Eating people?
more about the psychology or psychopathy that leads into these types of things. And I do wonder if his brother was being legitimate in his claims that he was a way worse cannibal than Issei. Or if he was just like
crazier
hanging
person.
on to the tails, you know?
He might be. Maybe, yeah. Or maybe the family ended up losing all their money and prestige because of this.
Because of the Kobe case. It's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, honor is a huge thing. I've been studying into Asian culture lately, but honor is a huge thing. Where over here it's more meritocracy. Over there it's more honor driven.
Yeah.
And if that dishonored the family, I mean, the dad might have got kicked out of the job. Next thing you know, grandpa's not a editor or whatever anymore. And then, you know, they've got to upkeep their estates, and it could have run the whole family into the poorhouse.
Yeah. So that's tonight's story. Thanks for joining, guys.
Yeah. King says, yeah, money talks for some crazy. I'm telling you. Yeah. I'd sure like to have grown up rich and become a shipwreck, though. Sounds pretty nice.
We have character instead.
No, thank you.
All right, guys.